Hi, welcome to Heather Cooks. Today we're going to be making blueberry pecan French toast. This is a great morning treat. It's incredibly fast and easy because you don't actually do any work the morning that you're going to eat it. You prepare everything the night before, you let it sit in the fridge overnight, and then you bake it the following morning. So all you have to do when you get up is pop it in the oven for 20 minutes and you're done. You end up with a fabulously decadent treat of blueberry pecan French toast. It's very easy, it's very simple to make, and unlike most traditional French toast, it's very safe for your digestive health. It's low in fat, there's no dairy, there's no butter, there's no egg yolks. It's not going to be pan fried in a lot of butter because it's going to be baked, so this is actually a much healthier version of French toast than what you get in most restaurants. So if you've been kind of avoiding French toast and diner breakfast for years, that type of thing, I know I have been, this is going to be a really nice treat for you. You're going to be able to get back some of the foods that you used to love to eat. You're going to be able to eat them again without having any problems. They're going to be good for you this time instead of bad for you. So we're going to start out with our baking pan. This is just either an 8 or a 9-inch square baking pan will work fine. We're just going to mist it a little, very lightly with canola oil. Help make the bread stick a little bit less. It won't stick too much. And then we're going to slice up our baguette, which is just sort of a loaf of French bread. You can get any kind of loaf of white bread that you like. I happen to like French bread for this recipe. You can buy a wider, thicker loaf if you like. It doesn't really matter. You're just going to cut it into 1-inch slices, and then we're going to layer it in the pan. Only 1-inch thick slice, and only one slice goes across the bottom. You're not going to stack the layers of bread. So we're just going to cut a 1-inch slice here. It'll probably take maybe 9 or 10 slices to fill this pan. And if you wanted to, you could certainly double this recipe and make it in a larger pan. All that really matters is that you make sure you just have one single layer of bread across the bottom of the pan. And also, unlike a lot of French toast recipes, this one you need to use fresh bread for. Most French toast is traditionally a way of using up stale or day-old bread. But for this particular recipe, you want the bread nice and fresh and soft because it's going to absorb the batter that you put over it, and it's almost going to turn into sort of a custard when you bake it the next morning. So you don't want bread that's hard and dry, not for this particular French toast recipe. Now it looks like I'm just going to get about 9 slices of bread if I really shove them in there, which is fine. You can kind of force the bread down flat into the pan. That's what you want. You don't want the bread kind of coming up the sides. You want it flat across the bottom of the pan. So we've got that. I'm just going to set this out of the way. And now we're going to whisk together the batter that we're going to pour over the bread. So you just want to take a sort of medium-sized mixing bowl, and you want to add 4 egg whites to it. Now, I like to use organic egg whites because then I know they don't have any pesticides or growth hormones from the chickens. No nasty ingredients. And this is a recipe where you want to be careful about separating the egg whites, but if a little bit of the egg yolk breaks and falls in, it's okay. We're not going to be whisking the egg whites until they're holding stiff or soft peaks, in which case you'd need to be very, very careful that there wasn't any egg yolk in there because that trace of fat would keep the egg whites from incorporating enough air to beat up really light and fluffy. But this is not that formal of a recipe. We're not really doing that. So don't worry about it. If you accidentally break a yolk, I do it all the time. It's okay. Try to fish out what you can so you can keep that fat content low, but otherwise you'll be just safe. Let's see. So we've got 4 organic egg whites. And you can just discard the yolks and the shells. And we're going to whisk these first on their own to sort of break them up before we add the other ingredients. Now you just want to get them a little bit light and frothy. You don't have to whisk them for very long. Okay, that should be good. Now we're going to add 1 cup of soy milk. This is vanilla soy milk. You can use just plain soy milk if you like, whatever is your preference. Want to add 1 even cup. So unlike a regular traditional French toast recipe, you'd be using whole eggs with the yolk, and you'd be using dairy milk. This is a lot lower in fat, a lot more digestion friendly, a lot better for your overall health. So we've got the soy milk, you've got the egg whites. Now we're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. Now you can add either freshly grated nutmeg, which if you buy whole nutmeg, they look like this, and you can grate them in a nut grater, which looks like this, or a nutmeg grater, or you can just use regular already ground nutmeg, whichever you prefer. For convenience for this recipe, I'm just going to use the regular nutmeg, but I'll grate some of the fresh stuff so you can see how it looks. Freshly ground nutmeg really, it does have a very nice flavor and aroma. It's kind of a special taste. So if you can find it and get yourself a grater, go ahead and use that. Your recipes will taste better as a result. But already ground nutmeg is certainly fine. Don't worry about it if that's what you have. So we're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of that. And I'll grate a little bit of the fresh nutmeg so you can see as well. It kind of falls in flakes. And you can actually see it's a different color and texture than the ready grated nutmeg. So we'll have a little bit of both in there. You can add a little extra nutmeg to this. If you wanted to use cinnamon instead as well, that would be fine. Now we add a teaspoon of vanilla extract. You want to use real vanilla extract, not synthetic. And then 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. You want to use brown sugar for this recipe instead of white sugar because it's going to add a sort of mellow, richer flavor. A little bit caramely. So there's 1. Our 2nd tablespoon. You always want to make sure you pack brown sugar but that it's level across the top. So we'll set that aside. Now at this point, you're more than halfway through the recipe. It really is fast and easy. So we're just going to whisk things together. Make sure you're using a large enough mixing bowl. Make sure that your mixing bowls are glass or metal or ceramic and not plastic. You have to go buy a set of mixing bowls. That may be an investment you have to make in your kitchen. They'll last a lifetime. It's really worth it to have good standard mixing bowls. You don't want them plastic because they absorb oil and they absorb odors and flavors. So I like just Pyrex or ceramic, stainless steel, doesn't matter. Now this is coming together nice and light and frothy. If you wanted to use an electric mixer for this, you could. You could also just throw it all in a blender or food processor and do it that way. But if you don't have the gadgets, that's okay. I've actually got probably every kitchen gadget there is, and half the time I don't use them because sometimes it's just faster and easier and even more fun to do things by hand. So if all you have is a whisk and a bowl, that's fine. That's all you need. That looks pretty well incorporated to me, so we're just going to set this aside. Now, what we're going to do is chop up our pecans and our blueberries for this recipe, and then we're going to add everything over the bread. And at that point, we'd be ready to refrigerate it overnight. Pretty much all of the work would be done. So I've got a 1/4 cup of pecans here. You want to measure before you chop them up. That will affect your measurements. If you chop something up first and then you measure it versus measuring it first and then chopping it. If you wanted to toast the pecans first to heighten the flavor, that's a really good trick. You just do that in a regular skillet instead of a non-stick skillet. Just toast them over medium-high heat until they start to be really fragrant and you can smell them. They'll get a little golden. Let them cool and then chop them up. That's a step that I do a lot with this recipe, but you certainly don't have to if you want to save the time and effort. That's fine. You can use them untoasted. It's still going to be really delicious. Oops. Now, you can see I'm chopping these pretty fine. That's what you want. If you wanted to grind them in a nut grinder or a blender, that would be fine too. It'd be a lot faster and easier that way, but a lot of times when it's a small amount of nuts like this, I find it just as convenient instead of hauling out the equipment to just use a knife and a chopping board and cut things up by hand. So that's looking pretty good. You want the pieces fairly uniform in size, fairly small. This is going to help minimize the insoluble fiber of the nuts, make it easier on your digestion. But nuts overall are very healthy for you. They've got a lot of really good monounsaturated oils. They're very heart healthy, something to try to incorporate into your diet as often as you can. Having it with the high soluble fiber base of the bread in this recipe really makes it tolerable for your digestion. So we'll set that aside. Now we're going to chop up our blueberries. This is half a cup of either fresh or frozen blueberries. It doesn't really matter. Even if the blueberries are frozen, you don't have to thaw them. They're going to thaw overnight in the refrigerator anyways, so use whatever you have on hand. If it's the summertime and you happen to be able to get your hands on the little tiny wild Maine blueberries, those are a really extra special treat for this French toast. They're a little hard to come by. They're very small. If you actually do find those, you don't have to chop them because they're so tiny, but they are really delicious. They're very special. These are just regular blueberries, so I am going to chop them up. And they're spurting everywhere, as you can see, so you might not want to wear white when you cook with blueberries. And just chopping up the blueberries is going to help break the insoluble fiber of their skin. Just like it did with the nuts, it's going to minimize the risk of the insoluble fiber to the GI tract if you have any digestive disorder. It's also going to help make them cook down a little bit more when they're in the oven. And cooking fruits and vegetables is another way to make them much more tolerable for your digestion. So we've got a 1/4 cup of pecans, got a 1/2 cup of blueberries. At this point, we're going to start assembling the French toast itself. So I'm going to bring back our bread. Now we're going to pour our batter over. I'm going to take a whisk so I can make sure I get all of the batter out. I'm just going to pour this over evenly. Now what you want to do is kind of push the bread slices down and then flip them over so that everything gets evenly coated with the batter. You can see there's a lot of liquid in here. It's a lot of liquid to bread ratio, but that's okay because when this sits overnight, the bread is going to soak up almost all of this liquid, and then when it bakes, it's almost going to turn to sort of a bread custard. This really is a fantastic recipe. I think it's better than regular skillet fried French toast. So you just want to make sure they're all sort of evenly soaked and kind of sitting in there. Now we're going to top the bread with the pecans and the blueberries. Doesn't really matter what order. Just sprinkle things over evenly. If you wanted to substitute almonds for the pecans, you certainly could. You might want to add a little bit of almond extract if you do that. Blueberry almond French toast is really good. You can also substitute cherries for the blueberries and make cherry almond French toast, or use the cherries with the pecans. There's a lot of different variations here, so use whatever fruit and nuts you prefer. Every combination I've ever tried has been delicious. You really can't go wrong. So now we're going to add our blueberries. You can see how much juice is coming out of them. And you're just going to top it evenly, kind of scatter it the same way you did with the pecans so that every slice has a little bit of fruit and nuts on it. That should be good. Now we're almost done. At this point, what we're going to do is make a little brown sugar topping. It's sort of a caramel crunchy kind of topping that goes on the French toast. And when you bake it the following morning, it'll caramelize and it'll really add a rich note to the toast itself. Oops. I'm a very messy cook. So it's almost all done. Now what we want to do, take canola oil and brown sugar and make our topping. And we just want 1 tablespoon of the canola oil and 2 tablespoons of the brown sugar. And if you like at that point, you could always add a little bit extra of the nutmeg or of the cinnamon, whatever spice you're using. So 2 tablespoons of the brown sugar. And then 1 tablespoon of the canola oil. This is pretty much all the fat that's in this recipe except for the amount of oil that's coming from the nuts. And canola oil is also heart healthy. It's monounsaturated. that's what you want. If you can't find canola oil in your area, you can use safflower oil or sunflower oil. Okay, so you just want to take a fork and kind of blend this together. This is going to be your topping for the French toast. You just basically want to stir it until it's all incorporated. And then we're just going to scatter it over the French toast, and at that point we'll be done. If you're making this in your own kitchen, it should probably come together in about 10 minutes at the most. So I'm just going to sprinkle the brown sugar mix over the French toast. And this is all going to kind of melt and make a crunchy, caramely kind of coating with the nuts and the berries. It's really delicious. You definitely won't feel like you're deprived in any way with this recipe. You're certainly not going to miss the whole eggs or the whole milk or even recognize that there's no butter or dairy in it. It's just going to be really delicious. So we're pretty much done. Now at this point, what we would do is cover it with saran wrap and put it in the refrigerator overnight. Then when you get up the next morning, almost all of this liquid will have absorbed. It's almost going to look like a custard at that point. And it's going to become a custard pretty much when you bake it. You're going to want to bake it at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So just get up in the morning and preheat your oven. And when that's done, take the plastic wrap off, pop it in the oven. It'll bake for about 20 minutes. You'll know it's done when the blueberries are kind of bubbling and all the liquid has released from them. So I've got a finished batch in the oven that should be done right about now. I'm going to pull it out, and you'll see what the finished product looks like. The stuff is really, really incredible. And I think it's perfectly done. You can see that the brown sugar has kind of melted across the top. It's bubbling a little around the corners. The blueberries have all cooked through. It's a little bit golden brown. It's just perfect. You can also see how much puffier it is than in the batch before we cooked it. That's because the bread has absorbed all that liquid and almost turned into like a bread pudding. So I'm going to cut a little piece of this. It's very hot. And you'll see what the finished product looks like. This really is one of my very favorite French toast recipes. If you want to serve it with a little maple syrup, you can. You can also cook some blueberries in maple syrup. Just bring it to a boil and then strain out the blueberry skins and you'll basically have blueberry syrup. That's really good. I think this recipe is fabulous just as it is. I don't think it even needs syrup. But if you really wanted to gild a lily, you could do it. So I'm just going to take one little piece. You can see how it's all become like a sort of custard with the batter. That's what makes it so good. It's very soft and very creamy. It's got the crunch from the nuts, the caramel from the brown sugar. This really is a delicious recipe. So having a piece of this for your breakfast is a real luxury. And the nice thing is that since you can do it all the night before, you could treat yourself to this on a busy work morning. It's really less than 5 minutes of effort when you actually get up in the morning. It comes together so fast. It can bake while you're getting ready, and you can have a piece before you're gone for the day. I can't wait to try it myself. I want to thank you for coming by and watching Heather Cooks today. If you'd like the recipe for our fabulous blueberry pecan French toast, as always, the recipes are at heathercooks.com. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you're beginning to believe that food that is good for you can taste just as good as well. So hope you enjoyed it. Please come again. Watch us again next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.